hey, a new MCU show just kind of snuck out onto Disney Plus right before Comic-Con. I think they'd promote this a lot harder, considering the whole finally giving Samuel L. Jackson the lead spot in one of these. Apparently, the lead-in story to the Marvel doesn't seem to be explicitly a multiverse thing, so they can kind of talk about the plot without having to address the mess that the Kang stuff sort of became, like we will with Loki aspect. They really just kept saying this is coming, and we can't tell you anything except Skrulls, probably. Wonder what the big issue could possibly be. I mean, there's no reason I could think of for there to be any reticence to discuss at all any semblance of the general plot, theme, setting, just in terms of where it takes place. Yeah. Okay, I guess that would do it. At least that's what I thought that the inevitable controversy that consumed the discourse in lieu of actually talking about the show itself, novel concept I realized was going to be when I was watching the press screeners, but instead everyone has decided to be very angry that the opening credits use AI art as their background visuals because heavy-handed visual pun about fake thing, imitating a real thing, etc., which, yeah, obviously done on purpose for that very reference point, not in especially great taste given there's a labor strike in the industry in part over AI use specifically, and they could have made that point by mimicking the AI style with animation instead of using it in order to avoid the obviously going to be impossible to have debate over the ethics of that. Is it bad to even touch AI stuff in this environment, even if it's the correct use of tools by an individual artist, etc., etc. That being said, for what it's worth, if it were me, I'd have used different credits and avoided the backlash, but also I think it's a little bit off target to pretend that this must have been malicious or whatever when it was obviously a stylistic thing with criticism-worthy bad timing granted, though I shouldn't need to clarify this. Support the strike, support labor, give writers what they want and then some, fuck the studios, fuck the companies, fuck corporations, pay your writers, and definitely fuck content scraping generative AI thieves. I hope the entire goddamn concept, frankly, gets sued into oblivion by every copyright holder in existence. Yes, even the copyright holders you don't personally like. It's the only way we're gonna nip this fucking thing in the bud. Anyway, to get everybody up to speed, Secret Invasion was this comic from like 15 years ago at this point that was a big status quo change at Marvel, but was mostly the first time in a while anyone had done anything with the Skrulls, the green Marvel aliens who can morph and change shape to look like anybody else, which always made them a fun, spooky, scary bad guy during the Cold War, and a really good plot hole solving device otherwise, but also kind of problematic as soon as anyone considers that maybe literal xenophobia isn't the best thing for your story devices to implicitly endorse just by existing. Which is why it was honestly kind of a fun twist when Captain Marvel decided to have them show up, but surprise, they're the good guys, a population of alien refugee genocide victims just trying to get by in the universe, and why it made the subsequent greenlight of a Secret Invasion miniseries based very loosely on the premise of the comic also interesting, since if the Skrulls were now good guys who we've seen continue to be good guys where they've popped up since, like in Far From Home and WandaVision and a couple other places, what exactly is the story here? What kind of significant narrative gymnastics, clever subversion of themes, or totally new concepts has been put together in order to, not just be undercutting what wasn't just a cool twist, but also a meaningful, topical, and necessary message about not demonizing refugees and immigrants in an era of global instability? Well, it turns out some of them are bad. Yeah, that's about it so far, at least as of the 2 episodes that were screened early. There's maybe more Skrulls around than we thought. Not all of them are good. Some of the not good ones are up to something even more not good. And yeah, that seems to be it so far. And I mean, in a sense, I can give some legit credit to a sci-fi show with multiple alien races running around actually committing to not doing the every species shares a moral compass thing, so we've basically got Skrulls who are just as all over the map as humans, they just happen to be green and have morphing powers. That's technically smarter than the normal version of this, honestly. It also feels like kind of an oh right, duh thing a Marvel show would normally turn into a self-aware joke at its own expense, but they're also doubling down on this being one of the very serious shows where people can die, and it tries really hard to be a gritty spy thriller thing right until someone has to say comic book bullshit in the middle of the other dialogue, and then it keeps going like they didn't. Which, sidebar, is honestly one of my favorite parts of these, like where they know the camera work is still dead serious and the score is doing the ominous dun 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 low build synth hum, and all the dialogue is like, Senator, Congressman, statement, mission, code, priority, binder, meeting, Professor Wombat, copy, 2 sugars, terrorist, rogue state, agency, amulet of mythoploxy, keycard, secretary. Like, those other 2 things absolutely belong in there, and it's totally normal. I live for that shit. Hook it to my veins. Dumb things should be dumb and proud of it. But yeah, it's an invasion already started, and they are among us paranoid sci-fi alien thriller mashed together with an over-the-hill soldier reflects on whether he knew he or his colleagues really were literally or figuratively spy thriller themed around Jackson getting to act something like his age as Fury in a flashback structure to allow for retcons and reveals where presumably we can get filled in on where the Skrulls have been between Captain Marvel and now. There's a pretty gigantic, well, that probably changes everything, but who knows how much. Shock reveal at the end of episode 2 I won't give away here, but the main basic thrust of things, at least 2 episodes in, seems to be less about overhauling the entire continuity and putting it in a different context where Nick Fury fits into it specifically, as in, it's almost been, this running gag the whole time that Fury almost has superpowers himself, the way he's everywhere all at once, knows everything, has like 10 steps ahead, basically a one-man army, one-man spy agency, even above S.H.I.E.L.D. So like, how does he do that? And now it seems maybe the answer to that is, oh yeah, the Skrulls, the good Skrulls have been with him, but not necessarily with anyone else this whole time, backing him up as part of the whole help us out with the whole refugee thing from Captain Marvel, except now it's been a few decades and one would assume there hasn't been much movement, especially with the whole Fury disappearing for 5 years and the blip thing, so now there's a let's try being terrorists about it faction of bad ones, and one assumes more to come from that, specifically tied to new main support characters connected to Ben Mendelsohn's Talos, played by Emilia Clarke and Kingsley Ben-Adair. What looks like the big comic book stuff aspect to the villain plot with Adair gets teased out on a computer monitor in episode 2 if fans are looking for it. Cool idea, kind of expected that's where it would have to go at some point, but still interesting to think about. But so far, apart from the obvious how do you make a scary foreigners hiding out as peaceful immigrant story not mildly uncomfortable in 2023 aspect, and all the paranoid sci-fi stuff mostly lands well. Again, I'm a sucker for trying to bend the goofy parts to fit with the serious parts, and it's a solid entertainment in its own right to see the actors on the other end of middle age are playing it like Jackson, Mendelsohn, or Olivia Colman as Fury's MI6 counterpart, playing this world-weary old soldier type, legit exasperated, having to hunt down all these young characters and keep up and just getting pissed off with everything. Like a lot of these, it's impossible to tell where the finish will be and whether it'll be worth getting stuck in the build-up, and you can forget to look at the actual material, but what material is presented here so far is slick, shows a lot of promise. I'm looking forward to seeing where it's going. I recommend giving it a look.